Diddy's expression shifted as soon as Prince's voice entered the courtroom. His composed manner broke as the last recording of the renowned. What was in this audio that caused one of the most influential people in music to lose his cool? Day 3 of this dramatic trial just turned up evidence that no one had ever heard before. The artist's voice reverberated across the room.
That one male guy who did things with Diddy and Cassie said he witnessed him get physical. Don. So again, we talked about how the domestic charges aren't, what he's being, what he's on trial for. But boy, it's stacking up. And I feel that the jury is going to take that into consideration.
The first Diddy party I went to was at Prince's house. So you want to go to Prince's house to the Diddy party where Tyrese is performing and Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher are swinging on swings. That is what's happening on the other side of the wall. And so the one thing that makes this party different than a Jamie Foxx party or any other celebrity party that wrangles a bunch of young women or guys or whatever too, is that Diddy didn't let you bring your security in the party.
Room, a ghostly testimony from beyond the grave. Day 3 began similarly to the first two, with journalists scrambling for the best seats, celebrities sneaking in through side doors, and legal teams practicing their paperwork. The ramifications are sending shockwaves through Hollywood. Accuracy, but this morning felt different. The courtroom was electric, and security guards were stationed at every corner. This is typical for a high-profile case, but today they doubled the customary. A court insider later informed me that the 4 officers had specific instructions that morning, but no one gave an explanation for why they positioned themselves right behind Diddy's table, something they hadn't done on prior days. Diddy appeared calm when he entered the room, wearing a well-tailored navy suit, bowing to the gallery's supporters and even grinning famously. His legal team was positioned around him like a shield, whispering tactics as they. He appeared to be a man who had everything under control after he had settled in, but he was unaware of the odd Prince's tape was made public by the prosecution. 2 IT experts silently brought up equipment that hadn't been there during the first 2 days at the prosecution table. They tested connections and whispered to the lead prosecutor, who continued staring at Diddy. A courtroom reporter later told me, people were texting each other from across the room, and there was a general sense of expectation that something was coming, but only the prosecution knew what it was. We all sensed it coming, wondering what bomb the prosecution was going to unleash. I want to remind everyone present that regardless of what evidence is presented today, I expect complete composure in my courtroom, the judge said, pausing after the customary niceties. After staring at the gallery for a while, he continued, any disturbances will be removed right away. The prosecution used the same systematic strategy in their opening statements that morning as they had in the past. Connected the dots between the evidence and the witnesses in the testimony from the previous days. It almost seemed typical until the lead prosecutor abruptly stopped in the middle of his sentence. Your Honor, at this point the prosecution would want to provide important audio evidence that our forensic team had just verified. She came to the bench holding a small black gadget. The defense protested right away, saying they hadn't been informed about this. Evidence Diddy's lawyers made angry gestures during a heated sidebar, but the court finally decided in favor of the prosecution. The evidence was appropriately revealed during discovery, declared that the prosecution could move on. Then the prosecutor faced the courtroom and said the words that made all the difference. What you are about to hear is the last private recording made by. Journalists stopped typing as the room froze, and
I'm just trying to listen. I mean, it's a lot of this stuff that I've heard and seen already. I'm really trying to connect the dots here and think like, damn, what if Prince was what if he caught wind of some I'll just say allegedly, stuff that Diddy might have been doing. That seems to be like, I ain't talking about consensual things, I'm talking about illegal things or whatever. But I'm just like, would Diddy be that dumb to like not think that Prince, this celebrity, has cameras in his house as well? So I'm just trying to think, like, because if Prince has cameras and he's recording stuff, you know, to get some dirt on Diddy, I don't know. I feel like Diddy with all his cameras that he allegedly had, or no, they actually found cameras.
Collective gasp of breath reverberated across the room as Prince Rogers Nelson, the musical prodigy and icon, prepared to. Talking from the afterlife, Did's main lawyer seized his client's arm. Diddy's face went completely white so fast you could practically see it happen. His whole legal team pressed closer, urgently whispering as, before a single note was played, the power in the room changed, and Diddy's legal team realized something terrible was about to happen based on the immediate panic. The prosecution linked their device to the courtroom audio system. When the prosecutor said that what you're about to hear had been found in Prince's private vault, the courtroom burst into whispers, and everyone leaned forward in their chairs. Diddy shared this sentiment. The prosecutor clarified that the video was made only weeks before Prince's death in 2016. Thus, this was never just any proof that journalists quickly scribbled on their phones. It was Prince speaking from beyond the grave. Prince made this as insurance documenting what he experienced firsthand, she added, adding that it was intended to be heard publicly. When Prince's voice first came via the speakers, a woman in the third row literally covered her mouth and cried it. Prince seemed concerned, and his voice was low and almost secretive. It wasn't just the shock of hearing him, though. Prince said, I'm making this recording because I don't know who to trust anymore, which was entirely different from his self-assured stage image. The sound was pristine, and you could hear him taking long breaths in between phrases. Prince was singing, but he wasn't performing. This was his most intimate, vulnerable moment. What followed altered the courtroom's entire mood as Prince began naming names, dates, and locations. I watched Diddy's expression as the audio played, and within seconds, Diddy Prince was describing parties at Diddy's residences in the Miami Hamptons. Exactly the same events that 3 prior witnesses had previously testified about. Prince's voice became increasingly agitated as the recording went on, and Diddy's self-assured face fell apart. His eyes opened, and his lawyer tried to say something to him, but he just gazed straight ahead, motionless. I've seen how they operate. I've seen who's involved. I've seen who gets hurt, he continued. These parties aren't just wrong, they're criminal. Every phrase appeared to hit Diddy like a physical blow. The impact of this recording cannot be emphasized. You can't cross-examine a dead man, and you can't coerce him into altering his account. Prince wasn't only reiterating what the prosecution said. He was offering insider confirmation that no one could contest. Prince explained he listed the attendees of a particular party in December 2015, including 2 celebrities who have previously denied ever going to Diddy's private parties. Prince said he saw the typical arrangement in the upstairs private rooms, detailing specifics that matched precisely what the prosecution had described in their opening statements. Prince's voice was the only sound in the courtroom.
Became such a big deal back then is ever since my 3rd album, I wasn't really taking large advances from the recording companies. I was recording the albums myself in my own studio. So the way I looked at it, I owned the work because I paid for it. And I did all the work. I created it, so I felt like it should belong to me. That said, the companies felt otherwise. And they would always hold this contract up and say, well, you signed it. And I say, well, I understand that. It's not like I want to leave. I just want to, talk about this thing and see if we can't make it more fair. Of course, they wouldn't change, because if they changed, they wouldn't really exist. And that's kind of the situation we're in right today. They're not going to exist much longer. But it's not like we're against them or anything like that. The idea is that we find better ways of working with one another. It shouldn't be a situation where they own the album or the work. We're talking about intellectual copyright. If they're going to be indeed a delivery service, then that's fine. But even FedEx doesn't say that they...
And even the judge was. Prince stated on the video, "I tried talking to him about it." The collective shock was almost physical. Court reporters later told me they'd never felt anything like it. I told him this had to be. The prosecutor paused the video at that very moment. The timing was flawless, even dramatic. He simply
and was like a willing participant and was into all the freaky stuff, and essentially that was the crux of what they were trying to do yesterday.
And do you think they proved that or not?
I mean, there's texts like that from 2009, "I'm always ready to freak off." There was some other texts where she was referencing like hitting him up about the FOs, is what they were referring to him. To me, like, yes, this doesn't look good, but at the same time, I think the timeline is crucial here. And these are texts from 2009, man. That was when they were first getting in the relationship. She was young. Obviously, they were in the honeymoon stage, and she was stoked to like, oh my God, I'm with Diddy. I'm living this lavish lifestyle. Of course, she's going to be saying things that she knows will curry favor with him to keep it going.
He laughed and added, "I should mind my own business if I wanted to keep working in this industry." When the courtroom turned to face Diddy, his calm exterior had entirely collapsed. His face was pale, and his hands, which had remained motionless on the table during the trial, were now noticeably quivering. His lead lawyer set a yellow legal pad in front of him, ostensibly to hide his emotion from the jury, but it was too late. Everyone had witnessed it. Diddy's meticulously built wall of confidence fell apart the instant Prince's voice recognized him. Diddy's full collapse in front of our eyes for 2 days was what really astounded everyone, not only Prince's remarks. He had been the epitome of composure. When accusers pointed the finger at him, he remained unflappable. When incriminating images were shown on the screen, he quietly murmured to his lawyers, and never once did he display any weakness in his meticulously constructed picture. But Prince's voice altered everything. As the tape went on, Did's alteration was startling. His lawyer, the same accomplished attorney who has represented other celebrities, put a. When a hand was placed on Diddy's forearm, which is a common tactic used to help clients stay cool, Diddy pulled his arm away so forcefully that water spilled from a glass on the defense table. A number of jurors responded by looking at one another. A courtroom sketch artist later told reporters that she had never witnessed someone's physical demeanor alter so drastically during evidence, revealing that Diddy's cool, collected reputation, which had made him an empire, was actually collapsing in real time. People in the back row could see his shoulders rising and falling quickly as his breathing grew labored and erratic. His eyes wandered about the room as if he was looking for ways out, but the judge never took his eyes off Diddy. Being a seasoned judge who has heard numerous high-profile cases, he was able to spot the telltale indications of someone losing control. Diddy kept shifting in his chair before reaching up and untying his tie with. Prince's voice continued to describe a private gathering in Beverly Hills as he leaned over to his legal team and muttered something so urgently that 3 of his attorneys huddled closer. He referenced a specific date, March 9, 2016, and an address that the prosecution had previously recorded in prior evidence. When Prince mentioned that address, Diddy got up, not slowly, not gently, but suddenly like. Diddy's legal team grabbed at his suit jacket as they attempted to yank him back into his seat after someone had pulled him up by invisible ropes. 4 security guards went closer to the defense table right away, and their faces were pure. As the recording continued to play, Prince reported entering a room and seeing behavior that echoed his own.
The other things that the Diddy's team tried to do was show how they had breaks, and she like was with Michael B. Jordan and was with Kid Cudi for a minute. But during that time period, she was still having freak-offs with Diddy, and I think that was them trying to show, like, this wasn't a controlling thing. Here she was, like, hooking up with other people. She just was into the freak-offs.
I kind of buy that, to be honest.
So...
like, she is out of the freak-offs then. She is... when she's with Kid Cudi, or you know, allegedly with Michael B. Jordan, she's kind of out of the freak-offs if she wants to be. So why do you keep going back? Yeah. I know it's kind of like a mental, like, she still loves Diddy. Diddy was jealous about her.
Oh, yeah, because that was another thing that the prosecutors were trying to do, is show that, that they had a very jealous relationship. She would get jealous when he's with Kid Cudi. Also, like, Kim Porter, Cassie would be jealous of Kim Porter.
Right.
Trying to show that, like, Cassie, you were in love with this guy. That's why you were jealous.
Right.
So, like, this was a real relationship.
It was just interesting to see Chris Brown.
I mean, he's always coming up somewhere.
He is.
Chris Brown.
All right, final story of the week. Final story of the week. Justin Bieber is not a victim of Diddy. So this was one of those, like, rumors or whatever that was flying around in the months leading up to the trial. And to be honest, there was quite a few rumors flying around, like, you know, was there minors involved? Says if no other celebrity was part of freak-offs, why are they in hiding? Are they in hiding, though?
I don't think they're in hiding. I just think other celebrities didn't want to insert themselves. No one wants to be tied to Diddy one way or the other.
Even if you're at a white party, like just having a lot of fun, and, you know, one of Diddy's white parties, you don't want to be linked in any way.
No, and that's why, like, all those people, there's a few people I think that have come forward and been like, I didn't see any of this freak-off stuff.
One lawyer urgently whispered in his ear, while another attempted to stand between Diddy and the jury box. That's a lie, Diddy said, losing all control. His attorneys appeared desperate, virtually squatting on one another to reassure their client. This was precisely what the prosecutors had described in their charges against Diddy. A reporter in the front row clearly jumped when he heard his voice reverberating around the stunned courtroom. He wasn't even there, so it never happened. The judge promptly slammed his gavel order in this. Prince's words continued to play across the speakers as the audience fell silent, and he gave Diddy a severe gaze. "Mr. Combs, control yourself or I will hold you in contempt." In that instant, the prosecution's plan became glaringly clear. They had purposefully kept this recording hidden until Diddy had been comfortable with a false feeling of security. They waited until day 3 when his guard, maybe reluctant to present the one piece of evidence that might shatter his meticulously crafted facade, and it worked flawlessly. Once the judge re-established order, the Prince's recording was played again by the prosecution, and what followed astounded everyone in the courtroom. Prince had not only made general accusations, but had laid out 3 precise charges that went right to the core of the matter. Against Diddy, Prince disclosed that he had been covertly recording troubling conduct in the music business for years. "I preserve everything," he said, including dates, timings, who was present, and what transpired. Been doing this since 2007 as the legal professionals in the room looked at each other. This wasn't merely a haphazard observation. Rather, it was methodical documentation from one of the most careful brains in music. The first, when Prince talked about the parties he went to at Diddy's houses, he dropped a bombshell. "These aren't just parties," Prince said. "They're calculated events I watched him separate young artists from their teams, get them alone, and place them in circumstances that they were unable to refuse." Prince mentioned a room on a certain Beverly Hills mansion, layout that matched floor drawings that had already been admitted into evidence. As Prince went on, the courtroom became silent. He conveyed his profound concern about the manipulation of young artists at these industry events. Prince claimed that if they believe this is their big break, they would already be trapped by the time they know what's actually occurring. "I have personally witnessed this happen to at least 7 musicians." The second accusation centered on a direct encounter. Prince claimed that when I confronted Diddy at the 2016 Grammy after-party, I told him I understood what was going on and that it had to end. He laughed in my face and said, "You may be Prince, but you're not untouchable."
You know, they have their notebooks in their hand. They're coming in, they're very alert, and I think this is one of those testimonies where you have no choice but to pay attention and almost be flabbergasted, obviously, at some of what you're hearing, because it's not only just insight into somebody's sex life, but the details are disturbing at times, especially during that prosecution testimony when we saw some of the alleged abuse, or we saw pictures of her after a beating of some kind, according to her. But the jurors are definitely paying attention. I don't see anyone that's not keeping their focus on Cassie Ventura, and also I noticed them taking notes a lot of times.
And the children, as they were exiting court yesterday, 2 of the girls were seen crying. How emotional have they been in court? Again,
I cannot imagine if that was my father or somebody close to me up there and having to hear details of their sex life. Those are young women. They lost their mother, one of them, the twins. So no one can probably quite understand what it is that they're going through, but I think that's something that you think about on both sides, you know, to look at Alex Fine, which is Cassie Ventura's husband, and think about him having to listen to all that's being said about the type of woman that Cassie Ventura was versus the person that's expecting, you know, their third child together now. So whether it's Combs's family or Ventura's family that's there to support her, her brother and her husband, Alex Fine, I think it's difficult on both sides. I've seen him taking notes from the beginning. I see him put his glasses on. He gets very close to the screen when they're reading some of those text messages, so he's paying attention.
Now, Ventura confirmed that she and Combs had conversations about a swingers lifestyle, but that the freak-offs, they were very different.
Yeah, so she talked about this idea where I guess Combs wanted her to watch him have sex with another woman. She said that happened 2 or 3 times, but that he mentioned it frequently.
Kim Porter came up today in testimony. What was the significance there?
The defense said early on that this case would be about infidelity, love, and jealousy. And this is where they brought that up today when they brought up Kim Porter's name. The defense asked Cassie Ventura, are you jealous, or were you jealous of Kim Porter? And Ventura sort of contemplated, but did get to this moment where she said, knowing that Combs spent holidays with his family, which meant with Porter, did bother her. And she admitted that. They also pointed out that there was testimony where she talked about being insanely jealous overall as a girlfriend. So, yeah.
We're hearing the judge wants Cassie off the stand tomorrow. Will the prosecution and the defense get equal time?
Yeah, as long as there aren't any additional motions, I think that is the goal, to have her off the stand by tomorrow.
Why do you think that? What's the reasoning behind wanting her off the stand tomorrow?
In the very beginning, Rachel, they told us that she would likely be on that stand 2 to 3 days.
I interpreted that as a danger. As this happened, Diddy's lawyers scrawled notes frantically, obviously caught off guard. Prince's disclosure of Diddy's financial dealings with a number of people who were reportedly compensated for their quiet was possibly the most devastating. He specified exact amounts ranging from $2 million to $1 to one man, $3 million to another, which precisely matched the financial documents the prosecution had already provided. I've seen the NDAs they signed and the money Prince mentioned during the trial. This isn't just wealthy people acting badly. It's a planned and systematic thing. As the recording went on, Prince's voice became more solemn. I'm making this recording because I'm afraid to speak. The accuracy of his knowledge indicated that he had access to information that only an industry insider could know. Out in the open, the industry's power structure shields individuals like him. No one wants to think about what goes on behind closed doors. The recording concluded with statements that chilled the tribunal. If I'm hurt, make sure the appropriate people know. This isn't just about looking out for me. It's also about looking out for everyone who hasn't been able to speak up when Prince is. When the voice eventually died down, the courtroom remained motionless, with no one moving or whispering. The prosecution had just pulled off an incredible feat, turning Prince. The lead prosecutor merely stood and stated, "No more questions, Your Honor," as they spoke into their star witness from beyond the grave. In only 7 seconds, Diddy's outburst changed the course of the trial. She didn't need to say anything more because Prince had done what no surviving witness could do: speak without fear of repercussions and divulge things that had been kept for years. Prince's legal team went into crisis mode as soon as his tape ended. His lead lawyer sprang to his feet right once, his voice nearly trembling, and addressed the judge, "Your Honor, we request a 15-minute recess to consult." The judge didn't even hesitate to deny our client's request. The court would proceed with the evidence presentation. He gave Diddy a hard look, saying, "I expect no." The desperation of our client was evident to everyone watching. Additional disruptions, Diddy's lawyers appeared surprised. They weren't used to being turned down. Normally, they would get anything they requested in court and charge $1,500 per hour. But today, the prosecution team couldn't conceal their happiness while everything was going against them. The lead prosecutor kept a straight face, although her second chair did smile a little as Diddy yelled. A legal analyst sitting 2 rows behind me muttered to his colleague, "This is catastrophic for them." Their trap had worked perfectly. They had planned for this reaction and wanted it. Now they had it on official court record. The judge spoke straight to the jury, shattering the defense's 2-day effort to depict him as composed and innocent. The outburst you just watched should be ignored in your. After the outburst, 3 jurors were looking straight at Diddy, observing his every move. Emotional responses are not evidence, but every trial lawyer is aware that once jurors see something, they can't unsee it. Following Diddy's eruption, security took no chances. 2 more cops moved to within feet of the defense table, and 1 officer stood right behind Diddy's chair, within seconds of him if necessary. Diddy had a terrible rest of the day as the prosecution kept showing evidence that was obviously related to Prince's tape. They revealed text and financial records that matched the precise payments Prince had specified. Diddy sat there perspiring through his fine suit, his hands shaking so much that his lawyer handed him a legal pad, while messages from witnesses recounted the identical events Prince had described. He refused water when an assistant offered it, probably to give him something to hold. By mid-afternoon, he was physically unwell, and his attitude changed from one of confidence to one of corneredness. Diddy's legal team submitted an emergency move to exclude Prince's audio from evidence, arguing that it was perhaps edited and hard to authenticate given the circumstances. This was the last straw, and the court adjourned for the day. The timing of this motion demonstrated how genuinely terrified his defense team had grown, and the legal experts in the room saw right once that it was a desperate attempt to undo what could not be undone. As everyone exited the courtroom, legal commentators were already making audacious predictions. This will be the moment people point to when discussing how the motions are filed. Normally, motions are only submitted when counsel have no other choices left. One well-known TV legal expert told his producer, Diddy went from appearing to be a man defending himself against unfounded charges to someone who lost control when faced with the truth in a single day. Case was lost. I've covered hundreds of celebrity trials, and I've never seen someone's case collapse so well, said a seasoned court reporter. Playing that Prince recording on day 3 wasn't just a stroke of luck, it was all part of the plan. Of a brilliant plot the prosecution had been preparing for months, according to court insiders. The prosecution team had this bombshell prepared from the outset, but purposefully withheld it until Diddy felt at ease. The first 2 days in the trial were aimed at lulling him into a false sense of security because they wanted him to relax before they dropped it. This explains why the prosecution's case seemed to. During the initial days, they weren't fully visible. The team spent almost 4 months authenticating Prince's recording, bringing in 3 different audio forensic specialists to make sure it hadn't been manipulated or modified in any manner. They created a robust verification method that would withstand any scrutiny, since they anticipated the defense would instantly contest its legitimacy. What's especially clever is how they examined Diddy's prior courtroom conduct after reviewing video from his prior court appearances. The prosecution team observed that normally, Diddy had everything under control during the first 48 hours of the proceedings, but he got notably less defense